On today's episode of the podcast, and as a follow-up to my last video, I'm sharing with you a little bit more of my first-ish impressions of the Flea Sweater now that I've had a chance to really work on it. So if that sounds like just your cup of tea, get cozy and let's dive in. Hello, and welcome to the Wool Needles Hands Knitting Podcast. My name is Taylor, and I will be your host. Now, I wanted to do a podcast episode today on one particular pattern as a follow-up to my last video. In my last video, I introduced to you a sweater that was new to me called the Flea Sweater, and I introduced the pattern to you or gave you my first impressions after looking through the pattern of this sweater. We talked about it. We talked a lot about colors, and I really appreciated reading through the comment section of that video and getting ideas of colors and hearing your guys' thoughts on the overall pattern. And so for today, I just want to share with you some more of a first impression that I have, because I have been able to work on this sweater. I've actually worked through the beginning of portion of this sweater a couple of times now, grappling with fit and color, and I have some things and some notes that I really want to share with you guys. But before I can do that really adequately, I'm realizing that I need to get my sweater on a longer needle so that I can show you the yoke in all its glory. So we're going to kind of start this episode out with a little chit chat while I get all of these stitches transferred over to this needle. Now, I want to start by saying that this sweater, my intention for this sweater is for it to kind of take me out of my color comfort zone. When I saw the sweater first, I noticed there were a lot of really bold colors. It was shown on a man. I'll pop that picture up here so that you can see it. And that was something that struck me initially as being definitely a step outside of my comfort zone in terms of color. I am not one to wear lots of different colors. I tend to keep things really neutral and classic. That's just kind of like my sense of style, I guess. I don't really love, I don't really love punching it up with lots of colors. But this sweater, something about it kind of said to me that this was a perfect opportunity to step outside of that comfort zone, because a sweater is a garment that allows you to do that. You can keep everything else pretty neutral. You can keep everything else pretty plain, and you can do that with your sweaters as well. But there's something about the sweater as a whole that gives you the hall pass to just kind of have fun with color. I like to think of, if you're familiar with the show, The Cosby Show, I like to think of Cliff Huxtable, who is the main character played by Bill Cosby in that show, and all of the different sweaters that he wore on a regular basis. Turns out a lot of those sweaters were actually sent in to Bill Cosby from viewers of the show. But there was something about them. They were all very unique and colorful and interesting. And he was otherwise, a medical professional and pretty, I don't really know, like kind of just pretty straight edge to the point kind of a guy. And the sweaters were just a pleasant deviation from that a little bit. So I like to think of this as like my Cliff Huxtable sweater. It's the one item of clothing, well, not the one, but it's one of the items of clothing in my wardrobe that really pushes the color envelope. Now, that being said, the colors I've chosen here, and I'm going to reveal those in just a minute, are going to be polarizing for some in terms of just how I'm putting them together here. There are going to be some of you that look at it and think I would never put this together like that. I would not. There's some colors here that might be visually jarring to some, and that was something that was mentioned in the comments of my last video. If you want to, I definitely encourage you to check out that last video, because the commentary below that video regarding color is really interesting. There's folks that leave not only their opinions about what colors I should keep and what colors should go, but also their kind of rationale for that, maybe a little bit of an educated background into why they feel that way. Those people that have more of a comfort with color theory, and I consider myself to be one of those people. I feel like what I'm doing here is breaking the rules a little bit in terms of what is appealing to the eye, because I understand the rules that I'm breaking, if that makes any sense. So I'm gonna go ahead and finish this off. We're gonna do some movie making magic so that you don't have to sit here as I do this entire round. And then once I get back, I will have all of these on a longer cable, and I can really show you all that I have here with my Flea sweater. Okay, we have made it. All right, I'm gonna get rid of this needle over here, and now I have a much longer needle that I can use to spread the yoke of this sweater out a little bit more. Okay, I am ready to share with you what I have of my fleece sweater. Now, here is a photo that comes with, and I showed this just a second ago, but this is the fleece sweater. You can see it here. And this is mine. Now, prepare yourself, because this is so far out in like left field of what I usually share on the channel here in terms of things that I knit. First of all, I don't typically knit in multiple colors, especially not this many multiple colors. The most colors I've knit with in the last year has been my stripe hype sweater, which was actually similar colors that you see here on the top, these little tan and white colors here. But that's the most I've knit with multiple colors, other than my striped little black tee, which is just gray and black, but nothing as colorful as what you're seeing right here. Now I'm going to go ahead and pop this on, and we're going to talk a little bit about this. I just want to pop it on just so you can kind of see what's going on here. Okay, let's turn. I gotta really look down because otherwise it gets like, I have a hard time seeing what is straight on the screen in front of me. Here we go. Okay, so here is my fleece sweater so far. Now, I know that the colors here, there are some of you, I can almost hear you kind of going, ugh. I know. And I don't mean like I know, like, oh yeah, I know it's really bad. I like what I have here. But I just know that some folks are going to look at this and think like there's something about these colors that just are very contrasty and they maybe jar a little bit. I'm looking at the yellow, okay? Maybe even the blue that you see here. But I have a vision here. I have a vision for an overall striped sweater that really punches up the volume in terms of color, but gives an overall intentional vibe. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I just know that from the yarn I had on hand that was contrasting colors in the yarn base that I'm using here. Now this is Fiber for the People yarn. That is my hand-dyed yarn on my Born, Shorn, and Dyed yarn base, which is a 100% Nevada-sourced Merino Rambouillet 2-ply sport weight yarn, kind of verging on a heavy sport, I guess you could say, but sometimes even like a heavy fingering. It's one of those ones that's, you know, depending on the project, it can kind of be pretty universal. I absolutely love this yarn. It is beautiful, but this is the yarn. I've been selling this in my shop almost exclusively for the last several shop updates as I work through my most recent batch of this yarn. I love it, and I love knitting with it. I love the fabric. I absolutely love it. Now, I also am on a mission to work through my stash. I don't want to add yarn to my stash that obviously isn't already there. So I'm really trying to work through the yarn I have available to me. And of this yarn, I had a very limited color palette to work from. And in fact, some of the yarn that you see, or some of the colors that you see here, are from yarns that are not part of this yarn-based collection. For example, this red that you're seeing here is this right here, which is a skein of yarn. There's a little bit of barnyard on there. A skein of yarn that my mom gave this to me from a farm up in Utah years ago, before I started Fiber for the People. This actually, I dyed this and it was one of my practice skeins, but it's a really beautiful 100% wool yarn. And I can't recall exactly what kind of wool it is, but it's a really lovely yarn. I'm using this, and then I'm also using, for this pink that you see here, a 70% non-superwash merino, 30% hemp sport weight yarn in this really lovely kind of peachy coral color. Because I needed something to balance out some colors, I wanted to get a particular color scheme in there, and this is in my stash and I wanted to use it. So I'm pairing some kind of oddball yarn bases with this as well. But with that considered, of this particular type of yarn, my color scheme was rather limited of the yarn that I had available to me. I have a cone of the undyed yarn, and then I have all of these colors that you see here, and I show these in my video, my last video. Okay, so they're all here plus these here. This is what I had to work with this yarn. And I know I dye yarn, and I know I could dye my own yarn, but that's not the point. The point here is not to dye myself a whole batch of yarn, because that's not what I'm trying to do. The point here was to try to use yarn that I already have and make that work in a color scheme that excites me. Okay. And so sure, like there's lots of different colors I could put together from my colorway collections. I could come up with other colors, but I was really challenging myself to use what I have here to come up with a color palette for this fleece sweater that I really enjoy. And this sweater calls for 6 contrasting colors. I'm actually using 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 contrasting colors here, right? 8. Yeah, 8 different colors. So I have 8 different colors here that I'm using. I needed to add 2 more so that my repeats kind of hit where I wanted them. And I did plan ahead of what this was going to look like before starting knitting. Now, I've had this on for a little while. I haven't been pointing it out. I've just been holding it up. It's been here. So you've had a chance to kind of look at this. Now, if you can imagine this as an entire sweater, yeah, it's going to be punchy and it's going to be contrasty, but it's also going to be balanced out by a really nice rolled over double thick collar up here with a good amount of this brown around my neck. And I'm going to talk about exactly why I have this and the sample photo does not. And that's really important in terms of how I like this sweater. And that's just going to be really important. But this dark brownish kind of ashy color is going to be prevalent here and then throughout the stripes. And in my opinion, it's like the glue holding everything together. It's the grout between the tiles, okay? It's what's going to balance this out and weight it down so that the colors don't just lift off and seem absolutely outlandish. Now, when I was planning this out, I printed out some graph paper on cardstock and I used my colored pencils to kind of map out my color scheme. So what you see here with the red bracket right here is the full repeat of colors. It goes from here all the way down to here, and then I started it over again right down here. But that is the full repeat of colors that my sweater is going to have. You can kind of already start to see how that's working. Isn't that cool? And I look at this and I think very Southwest vibes. I live in Southern Nevada in the Southwest United States. Color is a very big aesthetic thing here in the Southwest. And I think that this is really cool. And I feel like this has a lot of really great Southwest vibes in terms of the color. But I also think that it's unique. It's different. It's got a visual jar to it, but in my opinion, it's not in a bad way. So that's that. That is kind of, when it comes to the color, those are my thoughts. Now, yeah, I mean, I feel like when I look at this, somebody would say, oh, I love it all the way until the blue. And then I feel like, oh my gosh, what's happening here? And then, okay, this is okay. And this is okay. But what is happening here, right? That's the area right here. The blue, the red, the yellow, and the brown, where it's like really, really challenging your idea of color combinations. We're talking complete complementary colors across the color wheel from one another. I mean, brown isn't even present on the color wheel and it's right next to yellow, which is one of the primary colors. This is breaking all the rules of what is visually appealing to a person's eye when it comes to color theory. But it's surrounded by a really neutral brown. It's surrounded by two very complementary, or two very visually complementary colors. White is actually not present on the color wheel. White goes with anything. And then we have down here some things that are just a little bit more subtle. My hope is that not only this really dark ashy brown, but also the subtlety of some of these stripes with this really just busy, contrasty situation here is going to just make it look really funky and cool. And that's what I want from this sweater. I want it to be my funky, cool Cliff Huxtable sweater. I love this little fleas on here, the little spots of color. I love the stripe motif. And I think I'm really going to love the shape of this sweater. Which takes me to my next big point that I want to make, or not point, but thing that I want to talk about with this sweater. And that is neck shaping. I have a whole video on neck shaping and different ways that you can achieve neck shaping. I will link to that up here in the doobly-doo or down below in the description box. Watch that, because neck shaping when it comes to your sweaters is really important. One way or another, if you are knitting a sweater, especially one that's a crew neck, you really need to consider neck shaping, because you want to make sure, it doesn't matter whether you have boobs or not, okay, you could have just a flat barrel chest or what have you, you need to have some neck and shoulder shaping, because the front, I can use this shirt as an example, the front of the neckline needs to come down a little bit so that, or the back needs to be raised up a little bit to give you the angle of your chest. Everybody's chest is going to come down at an angle around their neck, and you need to accommodate that, because if you don't, if it's completely reversible, my shirt would be up here kind of pulling against my neck as the back of the shirt kind of sits back a little bit. Now, if you're knitting a turtleneck, this is fine because that's the point, right? It's supposed to come up on the neck. But when you're knitting a crew neck, you want it to come around the neck like this. Now, the way that this sweater is written, and I'll show you a photograph here, and I can tell you this because I've read over the pattern, there is no neck shaping. So you cast on a circle of stitches and you begin increasing for the sleeves and the body. There are no short rows to shape the neck. Everything is reversible. So that means you could wear the back to the front to the back. It wouldn't matter because there's no neck shaping to bring the front of the neck down ever so slightly to give you that really nice shape. I didn't really catch on to this until I had almost completed my first two colors. And then I realized that there was nothing to shape the neck, that it was going to be a reversible neckline, which drew my attention to one of the pictures in the pattern of the sweater being worn. And if I find it, I will pop it up. It's not in my printed pattern here, but it's going to be popped up on the screen. And actually, I wonder if I have it in my other printed pattern because I printed out both versions. Yeah, hold on. Yeah, I mean, it's really noticeable on the man, and you can see that here. If you look at the male's sweater, you can tell that the front of the neck kind of hits him right across where his Adam's apple would be, like at it's the apex of his Adam's apple, okay? It hits him right across here. It doesn't dip down under the Adam's apple. It hits him right across here, giving it a very boat necky look, or a kind of a weird, I apologize, not weird, but just kind of a square neck opening, okay? And the reason that's happening is because the overall sweater, the overall neck is not shaped to accommodate the natural slope of your chest. Now, the way that you can get that natural slope here, there's two different ways that you can do that. There's the staggered start method, which is where you cast on your stitches in a crescent, and then you start working back and forth, building out your sleeves and your body stitches, while at the same time creating kind of a slope. Or you can do short rows. I'll link to the video, and in that video I give lots of resources on this topic, so watch that video. I chose to incorporate short rows for mine. I feel like when it's a crew neck, it really is kind of the most visually appealing. It's the easiest to do, and I just think it looks nicer. So once I completed my doubled over knit collar, I started working my short rows in that brown color. Not only do I like the fact that there's neck shaping now, but I really do love the look of the sweater when you see that the collar kind of blends into the rest of the sweater nicely because it's all one color before you start all the colorful business. Okay, I just feel like it gives it a subtle and gradual start to things. So if you look at the front of the sweater, I want you to pay attention to how much of that brown color you see below the neckline. And then I'm going to turn it around and you can see how much of the brown color you see below the neckline on the back. Now, the reason there is more on the back than there is on the front is because I worked short rows around the sweater back and forth, not completing the circle, but working back and forth in a crescent to add more fabric to the back of the sweater. Now, I couldn't have very well done that in the stripe pattern. That would have been all too confusing and complicated to try to figure out. So I just carried on with this brown color, figuring it would give me a nice solid kind of, I don't know, just gradual, like I said, gradual movement into the color. But it also gave me more fabric in the back so that the back would sit up higher on my neck than the front. And I'm going to pop it on again and you can see what I mean. So it kind of lines up with my shirt. Let's see. Feel it out. Okay. There. So now if I turn to the side, you can see that the back of the sweater is up higher on my neck and the front of the sweater is down lower. If I had made this reversible, it would look something like this. And you probably have seen sweaters that kind of do this. They kind of choke up against the neck like this. And there's always something about those sweaters, if you're anything like me, that you're just like, there's something off, right? There's something about that does not look right. It looks like they're wearing the sweater backwards. And that's because it is a reversible crew neck. It should not be a reversible crew neck. Crew necks should not be reversible. I think that this is bordering on what would look like a mock turtleneck, but once I block this out, the crew neck is going to come down even further, and that having that shaping is going to be even more important. Now, if you have a full-on turtleneck, again, this really doesn't matter very much. But when it's supposed to fit you like a crew neck, you really want to make sure it comes down in the front so you don't get that weird choking up effect that happens from a reversible crew neck, which is how this sweater is written. So for those of you that are planning, I'm just gonna leave it on for a second. So for those of you that are planning on working the Flea Sweater, use my experience here to just consider adding short rows. Now, what I did here, and makes it a little bit easier for you because people are going to be like, well, how do I add short rows? How do I know how many to do? What do I even do? How do I begin? I hear you. What I did is I already own the Felix pullover by Amy Christophers. I've knit a bunch of those. I talk about it all the time. If you don't own the Felix pullover, purchase it. It's a fantastic pattern. If anything, just purchase it as a place to go to get ideas on how to add different elements to your sweaters. You can learn from the Felix pullover, and if there's elements of that pullover that you like and you want to incorporate it into a design, there's nothing wrong with that. But the reason I'm mentioning this today is because the way that Amy Christophers does her short rows in the Felix pullover is really very easy to follow, and the shape is perfect in terms of how it situates the neckline. I love her short rows. It doesn't have a particular stitch count. You can do her short rows with whichever stitch count you have in your sweater. So it will work for the Flea Sweater. Just follow the instructions for her short rows with your Flea Sweater, and that will give you the short rows that I think look the best with a crew neck sweater. So that's my advice to you. Of course, you will have to purchase the Felix pullover to do this, but you are going to be taking advantage of her part of her design, and I think it's worth it, in my particular opinion. So when it comes to the Flea Sweater, I really think if you want this to look its best, you need to add those short rows to bring the front of the neck down ever so slightly and to give it that really pleasing, professional, polished look. I really love what I see here. To me, this just looks really stinking cool. I can only imagine once I have the whole sweater knit in this color, wearing it with a pair of jeans and some cute shoes. Like, hello, how cute is that? Cliff Huxtable all the way. Is it kind of like color in terms of color, like a little, I don't know, punchy? Yeah, but it's very different from what I usually wear, and it utilized the yarn I already had. Yes, I could have dyed up a whole range of colors just for this sweater. I'm not going to do that, okay? I'm working for my stash. I have lots of yarn to dye anyway for my shop updates. I'm not going to do that. And these are the yarns that I had already had stuck up in my stash from various different updates where I had plucked, skeins for myself. And I need to use those. But this would be a fantastic sweater to knit. Sorry, but shameless plug. It would be a fantastic sweater to knit in one of my colorway collections. I typically do a 6-color colorway collection. The last 2 collections were inspired by frescoes of Pompeii. I'll pop those pictures up here so you can see what the collections look like. How pretty would one of these sweaters be in one of those collections? Yeah, I know. I could have completely nabbed one of those collection, 6 skein collections for myself, but I don't do that because it's not free to me, okay? And also it's not very, I don't know. I have plenty of yarn to use, and this is yarn I had. And considering it is yarn I had, I feel like we're making do, and it looks really cool. So I'm excited about this. This is my Flea Sweater. I really do love the pattern. I mean, it's very simple. You do need to pay attention because you're paying attention to not only the colors that you're using, but you also need to pay attention to which rounds you have to be doing increases for. It's not super complicated. You just have to be paying attention. But once you know, then you just work around and it's fine. I also feel like planning out your colors using graph paper, kind of like I did here, is a pretty good idea because it's not a very frequent repeat, meaning that I do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 repeats before I start the whole thing over again. It might be nice to kind of map out what it is that you're doing, just so you can kind of get a visual of it as you go. And it helps you to plan out whatever yarn you're going to use in your stash. I just did graph paper and colored pencils, and it worked for me. And I just keep this. I keep this with my pattern, and it makes me happy, and I'm excited about this. And I can't put this down. I know I have another project I'm working on, which is a cardigan, and I'm really excited about that too, but I just haven't been able to put this down because I'm having so much fun watching all these colors kind of come together. And ever since putting the short rows in, I've completely fallen head over heels with the idea of this sweater. Just, it looks so much better, so much more put together. I love the neckline of this. Again, this is just a rolled neckline. I knit 2 inches in 1x1 rib, and then I folded it over and I knit the live stitches with the cast on edge together in a knit 1, purl 1 rib pattern. And that gave me my rolled neckline. If you are familiar with the Magnolia Bloom sweater, if you have that pattern in your library, it's also a really great one to have in your library. That's the same method that she uses for her collar, and I kind of just did the same thing here because I really like the way that looks. But that's it, guys. That's it for today. I just wanted to share that with you because I am really, really excited about this. I'm excited about the colors, and I'm excited to get more done to share with you. I'm looking forward to getting the sleeves separated. That should be the next big thing in this. But yeah, definitely recommend the Flea Sweater as long as you're putting in some short rows. And it really is a really fantastic sweater. I hope that you guys took value from this. I hope you enjoyed yourself. If you did, don't forget to give the video a thumbs up. Definitely subscribe and click that bell icon so you can be notified anytime I upload new content. And also, I am doing a lot of reading. If you love reading and if you like to listen to people talk about reading, my husband and I have a booktube channel here on YouTube called Good Books Lately, where we sit and chat about all the things that we're reading, and it's a lot of fun, and I so hope that you check it out. I will link to that down below. In the meantime, until I see you for Thursday's episode of the Midweek Ramble, happy knitting, happy making, happy whatever it is that you're doing. Take care, be well, and I will see you soon. Bye!